I found my snowblower chained to a wooden stake in front of the HOA office. Bright orange violation tag flapping in the February wind like it was mocking me. I just stood there for a minute, soaked in the ugly kind of disbelief where your brain's spinning through every possible explanation except the obvious. Someone, I thought, has made a truly colossal mistake. My name's Xavier Thornton, by the way. I've lived here in Meadowbrook Estates, out in Neepville, Illinois, for going on 6 years now. And I never thought I'd be telling you a story like this. But, well, here we are. Now, let me back up a sec, just so you get the full picture. Meadowbrook Estates sits right on the edge of town, about 45 minutes from Chicago if the traffic gods are smiling on you. It's one of those planned neighborhoods, vinyl-sided houses, cookie-cutter lawns that look surgically maintained even in winter, and a list of rules longer than the Sunday paper. I picked this place because the price was right and it was close to my job, maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing plant over in Joliet. And the HOA? Back then, it felt like just another small tax you pay for living in the burbs. Annoying, but mostly background noise. But that morning was something else. It was one of those bitter cold Midwestern days where you walk outside and your nose hairs freeze solid. We'd gotten 14 inches of snow overnight. I was up at 4:30, same as always after a big storm. Not because I'm some kind of snow removal enthusiast, trust me, but because I had a job to do, a job I'd taken on, almost by accident, 3 years earlier. See, just outside our subdivision sits Fire Station 47. 2 engines, a ladder truck, little ambulance. When the driveway's buried, the response time takes a hit. And where I grew up, small town in Michigan, my old man was a volunteer firefighter, so I knew what that meant. Seconds count. The first time I helped, their ancient plow was busted, and 3 firefighters were out there with shovels, just trying to clear enough to get the trucks out. I'd bought this used Toro snowblower. Thing was a monster, chewed through 2 feet of snow like it was marshmallow fluff, and figured, why not lend a hand? Captain Mike Reynolds ran the station and looked like he hadn't slept in days. We got the whole place cleared in under an hour. He tried to pay me. I laughed it off. Instead, we made a deal. Every time the big stuff hit, I'd swing by and do their driveway before work. In return, they'd keep an eye on my place when I was out of town, and Mike would help with the odd home repair. It worked. No money changed hands, just the kind of arrangement that actually makes a neighborhood feel like a neighborhood. 40 times, at least, I'd been over there before 6 a.m. Always quietly, always early, never looking for thanks. But apparently, someone had decided my snowblower was too loud. So there I was, staring at my chained-up machine, reading this violation letter on crisp HOA letterhead, complete with our neighborhood's little leafy logo at the top. Violation of Community Ordinance 14:7. Excessive noise during quiet hours, it read. Your gasoline-powered snow removal equipment exceeds acceptable decibel levels and has been operated during prohibited hours multiple times between January 15th and February 8th. Equipment has been impounded pending review by the HOA board. A hearing is scheduled for February 20th. Failure to appear will result in additional fines and possible legal action. Signed, Helen Cartwright, HOA President. Yeah, that Helen Cartwright. She'd moved in 18 months ago, one of those folks who makes you tired just watching them. Platinum bob haircut, Lululemon everything. Drives a white BMW SUV and waves at every neighbor like she's running for office. And, I guess she was. Within 6 months, she'd wormed her way into the HOA presidency, mostly by showing up to every single meeting until everyone else just caved out of exhaustion. And the neighborhood? Most people just want to be left alone, so when Helen said she'd handle things, we were only too happy to let her. Big mistake. Helen ran the HOA like a dictator. New rules, increased dues, and violation notices for everything. Garbage cans out too early? $50. Christmas lights still up on January 2nd? Another fine. She'd patrol the streets, phone in hand, snapping photos like she was prepping for a PowerPoint on suburban decay. I'd kept my head down, approved paint, neat grass, trash cans in on time. I thought I was invisible, but apparently, snow at 5 a.m. finally put me in her crosshairs. I called Mike at the station. He sounded worn out, told me they really needed the driveway cleared before shift change. I explained the situation, told him the HOA had my snowblower on lockdown. Long pause. You're kidding, he said. I wish, I answered. Their backup plow was still busted, and they had 3 inches of ice under the new snow. You want me to come talk to them? He offered. I told him I'd try to handle it myself, but if I failed, we'd escalate. I stared at the HOA office, which, by the way, is just Helen's basement with a plastic sign and a set of hours taped to the door. Lights already on at 5:30 in the morning. She's an early riser, too, I guess. So, I stomped through the snow, across the street, boots crunching. Sun not even up. Streetlights casting everything orange. Knocked on her door. Helen opened up, all pulled together and pressed, like she'd been waiting for me. Mr. Thornton, I assume you saw the violation notice, she said, all formal. I told her I needed my Snowblower back, explained about the fire station. My responsibility is to enforce the rules, she replied, stone-faced. I tried explaining. I'm clearing the fire station driveway, the one that saves lives around here. When you called 911 last year, those were the guys who showed up. She didn't budge. Very civic-minded. But that doesn't mean you can violate community ordinances. There are electric options, or you could wait until 6 a.m. I laughed. Electric snowblowers can't handle snow like this. If I wait, the morning shift can't get the trucks out. You're putting people at risk over a noise complaint. She just pointed to the bylaws and told me the hearing date, then threatened to call the cops if I touched my snowblower before then. Slammed the door. I stood there in the cold, letting it sink in. Pulled out my phone, snapped pictures of the evidence, because at this point, it was feeling less like a misunderstanding and more like I was going to war. By the time I got back home, the sun was rising. Called Mike again, nothing he could do. The fire station would just have to tough it out for now. Work that day? I barely remember it. I kept checking the violation notice, feeling my blood pressure tick up every time. By lunchtime, I decided I wasn't going to just roll over. Dug out the HOA bylaws, hadn't touched them since I moved in. Turns out, yeah, gas-powered equipment isn't allowed before 6 a.m. But there are exceptions for emergency services and essential maintenance. Even more interesting, the HOA couldn't just seize property without a hearing. Fines. Sure. Property seizure? Nope. Helen had overreached, probably betting nobody would ever challenge her. After work, I drove to the station and filled Mike in. So, she's holding your property hostage illegally, he said, deadpan. I told him I'd need proof what I did was actually essential. He got this little glint in his eye and called the fire chief right there. Next thing I knew, the chief was promising a formal letter and would pull response data proving how important the snow clearing was. Suddenly, I didn't feel so alone. That night, I started calling neighbors. I wanted to know if anyone else was in the same boat. The answer? Oh, buddy. In the past 6 months, Helen had issued over 200 violations in a neighborhood of 80 houses. Most were for trash cans, a too big lawn gnome, stuff like that. One family had been fined over $3,000 because their kid forgot to bring in the trash cans. Everyone was miserable, but nobody fought back, just paid and kept their heads down. But there was an undercurrent of resentment brewing. By the next morning, the fire chief handed me a letter, formal, on department letterhead, saying my work was essential, vital to emergency services. I took it straight to Helen's place, knocked at 6:15, well within the rules. She opened the door, already braced for battle. I handed her the letter. She barely glanced at it, told me it didn't change anything. That's when I let her have it. I laid out that she'd violated the bylaws by taking my property, that what I was doing was exempt as an essential service, and that if she kept this up, she could be liable if someone got hurt because of her. For the first time, she looked, just for a split second, uncertain. She finally unlocked my snowblower, grumbling it wasn't over. I loaded it up and drove home, feeling, well, not victorious exactly, just ready for the next round. And the next round came fast. I gathered signatures for an emergency HOA meeting. Turns out, getting support was easy. Most people had horror stories. In 3 days, I had 15 signatures. The board, Helen, plus 4 others, set a date for the meeting 5 days before my violation hearing. I spent that time gathering evidence. Printed the chief's letter, response times, a spreadsheet of every violation Helen had issued, plus some notes from a lawyer friend of mine. He confirmed what I'd found. Helen had been issuing fines without board approval, required for anything over $50. She'd been playing president, judge, and jury. The night of the meeting, the community center was packed. I'd expected 30 people, 60 showed up. The energy was electric, equal parts angry and hopeful. Helen called things to order, looking cool and collected. When it was my turn, I laid everything out. The fire chief's letter. The insane number of violation notices. The money, $70,000 in fines, most for stuff like trash cans or Christmas lights. When I said, Helen's been treating this neighborhood like her personal fief, the crowd actually murmured. People were nodding, raising hands, eager to tell their stories. Helen tried to shut me down, said this was only about my case. But the board treasurer, Donald, cut in. He hadn't even known Helen was issuing fines on her own. The secretary, Margaret, a quiet lady in her 50s, had the meeting minutes. Turns out, Helen's authority was a stretch at best. Tim, another board member, confirmed it. Chaos broke out. Finally, Rebecca Ford, the nurse on the board, tall, calm, and with a voice that made people listen, proposed a full review of all fines and a suspension of enforcement. For votes yes, Helen the only no. Helen stormed out before it was over. I got more hugs, handshakes, and thank yous that night than I'd had in my entire life. But Helen, as you've probably guessed by now, didn't back down. Next morning, my truck tires were slashed. 4 tires, deep cuts, $800 and 2 days in the shop. Called the police. The officer asked if I thought Helen did it. Couldn't prove it, but the timing? Yeah, not subtle. Still, I wasn't backing down. The review committee found even worse stuff. Helen had made up infractions, photoshopped evidence, tripled fines without cause. By the time of my hearing, the committee had scheduled a follow-up meeting. Helen's job was clearly in jeopardy. But right before my hearing, Mike called. Helen had filed a formal complaint with the city, trying to bar me from clearing the fire station driveway, claiming it was a public nuisance. She'd even dragged the fire chief into it. My lawyer friend said to keep documenting everything, consider a restraining order. I didn't want to escalate that far yet. The morning of my hearing, the parking lot was packed. The board sat up front, Helen in the middle, arms crossed like a fortress. I stood before them and said, before anything else, Helen should recuse herself. She was the one under investigation, the one who'd seized my property. Rebecca, bless her, agreed. Donald did too. Helen had to sit off to the side, fuming. I presented my case, fire chief's letter, response times, statements from firefighters. Board asked questions. Rebecca looked at the other board members and said, I move to dismiss the violation and expunge it from HOA records. Seconded, voted, done. Helen stood up, red-faced, and ranted, called me a troublemaker, accused the board of caving to a coup. Tim told her flat out, this isn't about me, it's about her abusing her authority. Helen looked lost for a second, then hardened, announced she resigned, and stormed out. People cheered. The board announced a special election. I felt relief, but also a kind of dread. Helen wasn't done. She sent a lawsuit my way, claiming defamation, emotional distress, the works. My lawyer friend Daniel said it was nonsense, but it had cost time and money to deal with. The review committee's final report came out on the day of the election, documented 300 improper violations. 75 grand in bogus fines, evidence tampering, you name it. Rebecca Ford ran for president and won by a landslide. First act? Public apology to all residents, suspension of enforcement, a total overhaul of the rules. Helen dropped her lawsuit. Spring rolled in, snow melted, the community started to heal. Then, just when I thought it was over, I came home to find my house trashed. Someone had broken in, smashed things, spray-painted profanity, but hadn't stolen a thing. The police got serious this time. Detective Morrison, sharp as a tack, traced it back to Helen's younger brother, Connor, who'd been pinging cell towers near my house that day. Turns out, Helen had asked him to scare me. She provided my address, told him when I'd be out. They both got arrested, her for conspiracy, him for the actual break-in. The local paper had a field day. Former HOA president arrested in revenge plot. Property values took a hit, but neighbors banded together like never before. Term limits were passed, new oversight, regular audits. Honestly, the place became better for it. Helen went to trial, got 18 months in prison. She had to pay restitution, 12 grand, which I used to fix my house and donate to the fire station. She got paroled after 9 months and moved out of state. The neighborhood, once tense, now felt free. Kids played. Trash cans sat out an extra hour or two. Nobody cared. I kept clearing the fire station driveway. Nobody complained about the noise. And in the end, I didn't feel triumphant exactly. What happened to Helen was sad in a way. Her sister came by one day, sat on my porch, and told me Helen hadn't always been like this, that something had changed after her divorce. Maybe so, but choices are choices, and the damage was real. One quiet evening, sitting on my porch, I realized what I'd really fought for. Not just a Snowblower, not even just for myself, but for a community that could breathe easy, laugh again, decorate for Christmas without fear. I called Daniel, thanked him, and he laughed, told me I was the good kind of stubborn. Maybe I am, but sometimes stubborn is what it takes. So what do you think? Was justice served? Did we do the right thing, or was it too much? I'd love to hear your thoughts about HOAs, about rules, about when it's right to fight back. Drop your stories and opinions in the comments. Tell me, when have you had to stand up for yourself or for your neighbors? What does doing the right thing look like in your world? Because, sometimes the difference between misery and community is just one person saying, enough.